The Clearwater conspiracy is the story of a typical campaign launched by the Scientologists back in the middle 70s. Much of what you will hear is still under investigation by a federal grand jury in Florida. It demonstrates graphically the tactics used by church officials in furthering their religion and in persecuting anyone they felt was trying to get in their way. So Clearwater, in effect, was a microcosm of the kind of operations undertaken by the Church of Scientology. Clearwater used to be a quiet, even placid town on Florida's west coast, next door to St. Petersburg and Tampa. A popular retirement community, conservative politically, mostly Baptist. But a few years back, Clearwater's economy was beginning to feel some pain. Tourism was off. The city's downtown area was beginning to dry up some when in 1975, along came an unknown group calling itself United Churches of Florida, looking for a place to settle. And they put up almost $3 million in cash for two big downtown buildings, the old Bank of Clearwater and that imposing structure, the Fort Harrison Hotel. Much of the business community was happy, but some city officials and the local press were curious about the identity of United Churches of Florida. Who were they, this church that had that kind of cash? Well, it turned out that United Churches was in fact the Church of Scientology, and that initial deception infuriated these citizens of Clearwater, shown rallying a couple of months ago against the Scientologists. Their former mayor, Gabe Cazares, was bitterly skeptical of the church. He is a key figure in Clearwater's continuing rebellion against the Scientologists.
L. Ron Hubbard has stated that Scientology is extremely wealthy, that it has the money to buy cities and even countries. That destructive cult has to know. Let us make it perfectly clear for once and for all that sparkling Clearwater is not for sale.
Now, spokesmen for the church insist they came in under the cover name of United Churches of Florida only after they had been repeatedly harassed when they tried to set up shop in the open in other cities. But that explanation did little to calm the people of Clearwater, who saw Scientology as a cult and were furious that a good chunk of Clearwater real estate had been taken off the tax rolls. The mayor continued his attacks, and for his pains he was placed on the church enemies list. They set out to smear him with sexual innuendo, to ruin him politically. I read to him from a church memo, culled from documents we acquired in our investigation, just what they planned for Cazares. The purpose of this operation is to actually get real documentation into the files of Mexican License Bureau or bureaus stating that the mayor got married in Mexico to some Mexican gal 25 years ago who is not his wife, so puts the mayor in a position of bigamy. This can be accomplished either by a bribe or a covert action. So what you're saying was that they were trying to destroy your character, assassinate your character.
Without question, they did many things to try to destroy me.
Mrs. Cazares told us what the church did to her.
Things like this never happened to Gabe and I before. We've been married 29 years. Suddenly, I was getting all kinds of mysterious phone calls.
Saying?
Girls calling is Gabe there? Telling me there's something personal between he and me, asking me if I knew where, do you know where Gabe is now? Things like that, you know.
It was difficult for us to imagine how the tale the Cazares told meshed with the religion that calls itself Scientology. We wondered just who are these Scientologists and what they're doing inside Clearwater's historic Fort Harrison Hotel. This library is on the 10th floor of the Fort Harrison, which is in effect the Clearwater Seminary of the Scientologists. Men and women from around the country, indeed around the world, come here to study the gospel according to L. Ron Hubbard. Scientology, which calls itself a religious philosophy that can be applied to Christians and non-Christians alike, aims at helping an individual to find himself, herself, through spiritual fulfillment. Its primary religious artifact is something called an e-meter, used by church ministers, or auditors as they're called, to identify past painful experiences and eventually to blanch them out, to reach a state of peace, or clear in church jargon.
Very good. You call a time like this cheerful?
Yeah, early in the week here, I got up and...
Church members swear by this e-meter auditing process. They swear by Ron Hubbard and Scientology to such a degree that they will pay, for instance, $2,255.45 for a Ron Hubbard personal ethics and integrity course. Without the man in person there, he is now a recluse. or a public relations course for $10,525.41. Room and board are extra. The Church of Scientology will not open its account books, but its assets are reported to run into the tens of millions. They've already spent over $10 million in cash for properties they have bought in Clearwater alone. It was partly the church's real estate acquisitions in Clearwater that attracted the nearby St. Petersburg Times to the Scientology controversy. But the Scientologists didn't like the stories the newspaper published about them. So the St. Petersburg Times wound up on their enemies list. Reporter Betty Orsini was doggedly pursuing the story of the church's undercover campaign in Clearwater. And so the Times became the object of an all-out attack. Scientologists stole files from the paper's legal offices. Its reporters and editors were harassed. Only, says editor Eugene Patterson, only because the St. Petersburg Times was covering a news story.
That's all we were trying to do. Find out who they were, what they were up to, so that we could inform the community.
And what they did to you?
They put the heat on. The pressure gets pretty heavy from them.
What about the reporter who was involved in the investigation?
First, they slandered her to me in an effort to compromise her job.
Slandered her?
Saying she was printing lies, that she was not giving their side, that she was being unprofessional. After that, they went after Mrs. Orsini's husband. He heads up a small charity here in St. Petersburg, Easter Seals. He's the executive director. And once they found they could not get Betty Orsini off the story, or get the St. Petersburg Times off it, the next thing we knew, an anonymous letter, a poison pen letter, charging criminality to Mrs. Orsini's husband, landed on our city desk and that of 2 or 3 other newspapers in Florida. The man was innocent, and I think they thought that we were some Bush League newspaper that they could scare out of the box.